conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When, O supreme amongst humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you who were wise then, I prostrate. With pure bodies, form supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like a spotless moon, color of gold, to you I prostrate. Dust-free like you, the 3 worlds are not. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding. The field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to the Dharma that pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts. To you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all 3 ever devout homage, to all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms, atoms in all aspects, with supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all-seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. And then the Heart Sutra on page 9. Thus did I hear at one time, the Bhagwan was dwelling on mass of Vulture's mountain in Rajgriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bodhisattva was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also, at that time, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara: how should any son of a lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Sharidatiputra: Shariputra, any son of a lineage or daughter of a lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form, form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristics, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance and no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, Bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly, completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Tayata gate gate para sangate bodhi soha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagwan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of a lineage. It is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharadatiputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. And then mandala on page 14. Shingambo wajua om benza bumi ahom wanshin seji sai ji om benza reke ahom ji chari koryogi kowe uzu rigya bori ra shalo papo lo zambole nu balanche chandami nyen ludan le ba ngaya dang haya shin yenden dan lang jo dro dame nyen dan dame Ningeda Rinpoche Ria Wo Pa Sangye Shin Doje Yeba Mama Pai Loto Golo Rinpoche Nobo Rinpoche Somo Rinpoche Lambo Rinpoche Lambo Rinpoche Dajo Rinpoche Mabun Rinpoche Gajen Boi Bomba Gema Jenwa Ma Lu Ma Gar Ma Medo Ma Yiba Ma Nazama Dijama Nima Dawa Rinpoche Do Jole Nambala Gyawe Gyasen Uzula Dami Bajo Panson Soba Matsan Wamepa Sanshin Idu Uma Ida Dinjen Sawa Dangyopa Chebe Padan Lama Damba Nanda Gebra Doya Lama Lozan Do Wan Doje Chan Jambo Lazo Godan Jib Namna Jingambo Waju Doje je dowe dondo je so so shene gyan da so droa ma ge na ge ta da nyam be sentient ta je la to ze wa jen bo go ne jing ge la do zo Sa ji be ge ju je me do dra mi ra le je ni de gen ba di sang ge jin do mi de o wa gi zhou ge nan da jin la je ba zhou ye da go lo da na ma da la ga mi ya da ya mi. And then finally, the refuge in Bodhicitta on page 20. Sangye chodan soge chana la jancho bado dani kaso ji dagi jenyangi pe sonangi dola panche sangye dopa jo sangye chodan soge chana la jancho bado dani kaso ji dagi jenyangi pe sonangi dola panche sangye dopa jo sangye chodan soge chana Janjo bado dani gazo ji dagi joshe gi pe sonangi dola penshi sangye do pa jo. Thank you so much. Okay, so to review a little bit, we are studying this text, Engaging in the Bodhisattva's Deeds, by Shantideva, a master of the 8th century in India, 7th, 8th century, and who was at Nalanda Monastery, and you can still go and visit the ruins. And what we have from him are two texts, this one and one called the Compendium of Trainings or something like that in translation. Both of them are now in English. This text, this Bodhisattva Deeds, has been translated many, many times into English. There's not one that's bad, but they all have different flavors and bring different richness to the text. So he, as we discussed, he recited this orally in a public teaching, and at the end of the 9th chapter, it is said that he rose into the air and then dematerialized, and then just the voice spoke the last chapter, the dedication chapter. And but whatever the magic and mystery around that was, what he left us with was a very practical meditation text to help us change our minds from being self-centered, poor pity me-centered, into something that's greater and grander and vaster, and the mind of Bodhicitta, the mind wishing to become fully enlightened. Why? Because that's the best way we can help sentient beings. So the drive is to help sentient beings. The means is to become fully enlightened so that we can work for their benefit in the best way. Why is being fully enlightened good for us to help sentient beings? Well, for a start, they say that we can read someone's mind. So rather than me sitting here going, I've no idea what these people will find useful, and kind of just throwing stuff out, I'd be able to look each one in turn and go, oh, this verse is good for them, this verse is good for them, like that. That would be worthwhile. And many other things, to be able to manifest different images in the mind and elsewhere to encourage people to move along the path to kindness and compassion and great love for sentient beings. So this text exists in, I think there are still about 2 or 3 Sanskrit recensions left. And they're not exactly the same. And that's partly because in a culture where things are hand copied out by hand, then mistakes will often come in. But also, people generally hear a text first in Indian culture, and also in the old days in Tibet. You hear the text, and then it's written down. And the writing down of the text is a way of helping you to keep the text in your mind, to memorize that. And we had this discussion about text having these three qualities: the printed thing, the spoken thing, and the mentally held thing. And then the key one of the mentally held thing is the realization of what that meaning is. That then gives us a dharma to hold in our mind. So then it was translated into Tibetan on a number of occasions. And so if you know your Tibetan history, there were two basic pushes of Buddhism into Tibet. One was in the 7th and 8th centuries, and the other one was in the kind of late 10th and early 11th centuries and 12th century. So this text, the Bodhisattva's Deeds, was brought into Tibet in the first wave. And what we have is the kind of standard text, if you like, which is of 10 chapters. And it has a sub-commentary by Prajna Karamati, and then a sub-commentary to his sub-commentary, and then about 6 other commentaries, and they're all in the Tenjo collection, which is the collected translations from Indian language of Indian masters and realized beings who made commentary on the word of the Buddha. So, as you know, in the temple, on the right-hand side of the Buddha is the Buddha's word, the collected Buddha word, and on the left-hand side is the commentaries translated from India. But there is another text that has survived from the area of Dunhuang in China, Western China, and it was translated in the 8th century, something like that. And it's structured slightly differently. It has quite different verses in some places. It lacks some verses in other places. But the most interesting part, from my point of view, is that the chapters, there are 9 of them. Because in that text, chapter 2 and 3 are one chapter. And to me, that makes a lot of sense, because if you're going to try and take up this mind of bodhicitta, this mind wishing to become fully enlightened for the sake of all sentient beings, you need a lot of merit or positive energy, or whatever that phrase is we want to use to translate sonam from Tibetan. And the way we start doing that is by generosity, mental generosity. It's a generosity of mind. You don't have to have lots of possessions in order to be generous. You can certainly have lots of possessions and give them away, and that is generosity. But the thing is, it's a mental state. It's an opening, a mental state. You move away from being grabby and graspy and needy into a sharing, open state. And that then moistens the mind, or kind of makes it prepared to take up this task. So, and as we said before, that's in the British Library. And Jane was talking yesterday that maybe we should organize a little trip to the British Library, because she has connections there with Burkhard Kressel, who's the keeper of the Tibetan collection in the British Library. And we could always chance our arm and see whether we could see some of the Dunhuang things. They're extremely fragile. Obviously, they lasted that long in the desert. They're not going to be in perfect condition. But we could at least maybe see some of the facsimiles or something like that. So that's a thought for the future. But in any case, coming back to this text. So it's a text in 10 chapters. It's widely taught across the traditions. It's widely taught Nyingma, Kagyu, Geluk, Sakya. We all have commentaries on it. But since this is a Geluk center, then the commentary that we kind of base around generally, well, 2 of them we base around really. Historically, we base around the commentary from Gyaltsab, who is one of the 2 main students of Tsongkhapa. So he was the senior one. Gyaltsab and Kedruk are the second and third throne holders in the Ganden tradition. And as we said yesterday, there are 4 big commentaries by Gyaltsab Dhamma Rinchen called the Dartik Shi, which are considered very good commentaries. There's one on the Uttara Tantra, and then two other ones, one on pramana and one on the ornament of clear realization. But also, because up until very recently, until Fedor did the enormous work of translating that into English, we also rely on modern commentaries, so current teachings. So His Holiness has taught this text a number of times, giving the oral transmission of the text, the lung, so that we can work with it. And a couple of books have been made of his teachings. And there is one, Andros found one which looks as though it's a reissue of one of his earlier books, but we're not sure. You know that way wisdom books retitle things, and then you think, oh, I haven't got that, and you buy it, and then you realize it's the same. But His Holiness's commentaries are extremely good. Also, there's a commentary by Geshe Yeshe Tobden to Duagarath Sparam, nice man, now dead. Very nice book, produced from his Italian teachings. But His Holiness's books are small, which maybe it's just because I'm getting older, I find the big heavy-duty books a bit much sometimes, but they're very pithy. His Holiness really has worked with this text. And His Holiness received oral transmission from a number of teachers, but he particularly values the transmission that came through Kunalama Rinpoche. So Kunalama Tenzin Gyaltsen was a Nyingmapa Lama from Kunu, that's why, in India, and a very great scholar, and clearly somebody who, if he hadn't generated Bodhicitta, he must be very close to it, because his writings on it are exquisite and very uplifting. And Kunu Rinpoche received it from a Lama in Samye. So this text has both a physical thing, and it also has an oral blessing lineage and oral transmission lineage. And as you know, in Tibetan Buddhism, we can pick up many books, even if they're translated or not, but you can't really get to grips with it until you start to study it with someone who has the oral transmission, and you start working together. And you should also try and get the oral transmission. His Holiness will teach this again, I'm sure. And when you see it, just go, because it gives something to your working with this text. Although I sat in front of His Holiness on 2 occasions for this, you cannot imagine that I have the oral transmission. So go to a Lama for this, not some idiot like me. And then the first chapter we looked at, it's really about developing admiration for, appreciation of, honoring the mind of bodhicitta, this mind seeking to become fully enlightened, because that makes us the best possible use for others, and those people who embody that. So the bodhisattva, that's why they're called bodhisattvas, is because they have bodhicitta, and Buddhas, of course, because they've sorted it. They're completely sorted on this. So that first chapter kind of feeds into the 7-limb puja, or this Anuttara puja as it's called in Sanskrit. And we'll do it again. What are the 7 limbs? First one, please. Prostration. Next one. Offering. Next one. Next one. What? Rejoicing. Yes, good. Rejoicing. Yes. You meant to belt it out. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel, and everything. Okay. Oh, I'm on film. Oh. What's up? So, next one. Requesting. And? Please. Yeah, these two can switch, can't they? Yeah. So, requesting to teach and requesting to stay. Yeah. And that's it. And then dedication. Yeah. So, and that's often in our pujas we have that. Sometimes there's 1 line each. And the idea with that 1 line each is that you're so familiar with that you just go, yeah, prostrate. It comes like that, just instantly, that feeling with each one. So sometimes it's better to find one that has a verse each, and then you can work with that. But all these things are to trigger this feeling of reverence, of honor, of it's not a kind of, it's not like where peasants and the aristocratic lord comes by and we're kind of like this. It's not like that. It's just real admiration for somebody who is embodying something that we really admire and we want. It's like when you look at this wholeness and you kind of go, I have no idea whether Buddhas really exist or not, but he has something that I think is fantastic, and I'd like some of that, please. That kind of, you see them and they embody something that is just so rare and so beautiful that you get inspired to go for it. So then, and that's basically the first chapter, and if you remember at the very end of that first chapter, there's a kind of prostration verse, and you can kind of read that back into the whole of the chapter if you like. And then we move into the second chapter, and there's lots and lots of offering, and they're very traditional forms of offerings, and there's the offering of the bathing house and all the rest. But the point is to offer up, again, it's a mental generosity, to offer up things that are beautiful, that inspire you, that you think are gorgeous. So if parks open you out and you think it's wonderful, then offer up parks in your mind, lakes, anything, little animals, cats. If you like Dorji the cat, offer him up, because you're trying to, again, develop that open up feeling about this thing and this thing of not clinging. So, and this is particularly important, when I was saying find things to rejoice in. There are two ways to do things, aren't there? The shopping way of dealing with the world is to walk around and go, that's beautiful, I want that. But you don't have to do that, I want that. You can just go, that's beautiful, that's it. And for that point of view, going down Oxford Street is fantastic. And so many sentient beings to love at the same time. But just there are beautiful things around us, and you can go out into the countryside, go into the parks, and there are beautiful things. Even in our garden, there are beautiful things. The tiny little flowers that are kind of pink on the outside that are just opening in front of the Buddha. They're beautiful things. Sorry. So this opening, this generosity, and it should be an enjoyable meditation when we do that, whatever we're doing with that. And eventually it should permeate into our normal life. We should be able to let go of things slightly more easily. We should be able to share things slightly more easily. I mean, that's the point of it. And, with generosity, you have all these things about offering your possessions, and then there are some very, in other texts you get these things about offering your wife and your children and your chariot, and you have to remember that some of these things are culturally bound, and so in ancient India, the wife was, and quite a lot of modern cultures and also modern people's thought, the wife is a kind of good and chattel, and your children are goods and chattel as well. However, we have a different view that we believe that all beings are kind of agents in their own right, and therefore you can't just give away your partner. But the point behind that story is the non-attachment, the non-clinging. That's the thing behind all of those things. Because you dearly love your children, you dearly love your partner, your life partner, or whoever, your parents, then but the way we do dearly love has always got some sticky bit in there, and it's getting rid of that sticky bit and just enjoying them for who they are rather than what they might bring to you in your world system. And then we moved on to confession, or admission of fault, and this Tibetan word shakpa, which is that you split a log open, you see the heart wood, and that kind of honesty that we need about our failings, but also that honesty that moves on is we don't wallow in things that we've done in the past. We move on from them. So the Vajrasattva meditation, at the end of that, you become Buddha. It's a kind of way of saying, and now we've moved on. Of course, getting rid of past imprints is not as easy as one meditation session, even if it was all crystal clear and everything was, all the lights were flashing. But gradually over time, we move on. And that's the point of this confession thing, because the nonsense in our heads blocks us from being useful for others. You know, if I've got some, on a negative thing, if I meet somebody and I just instantly take a scunner to them and I don't like them, then I'm not going to be terribly helpful to them. If they need some help, I'm going to have to be working with my own problem rather than working out what they need. Similarly, the other way around, if I meet someone and I think, oh, you're absolutely gorgeous, you know what I mean? After that, then they could have the most difficult problem that they want me to listen to, and I'm just thinking, you know. So again, I can't work with the person as they are in front of me. So this, pushing away, grabbing in that we do so horribly constantly, damages our ability to meet each other, really, and the basic thing. And when people walk through the door, it's really interesting watching how we quickly put on stick-it labels all over somebody. They are this, they are that, they're not this, they're not that. And then sometimes later on we get to know them more clearly. And you realize they weren't anything like what we first imagined them to be. I remember one time at work, many years ago, my boss was very keen to kind of get on with everyone in the office, and he was very good at it. And he called me in one day and he said, I've been talking to, nameless person, who was a young lad. And he said, I've been talking to him about football and rugby and cricket and all that kind of stuff. And we're just not really kind of connecting. And I said, well, maybe you should talk to him about Shakespeare, because that's what he's reading at the moment in the office. And he went, really? Because he just assumed that, a 22-year-old, wore football gear, but didn't actually care about football. It was the fact that you don't have to wash football gear so often. So we really, getting rid of the stuff that blocks our mind to work with others is about an honesty about what we tend to do in terms of positive projection, negative projection, whatever. Any kind of projection or Lama Yeshe used to call it superstition, as he looked in the dictionary, and super, stitio to place, super on. So we place all this stuff on somebody else. And I don't know whether Rinpoche still does, but Lama Zopa Rinpoche for years used to talk about hallucination. You're all just hallucinating all the time. And Rabina's favorite phrase is, we just make it all up. But it's that same thing. We're throwing out positives, negatives, and we react to our projection, and it's like, far too busy. We need to calm down, and become more stable, more real about who we are and what we're doing. So this confession, the really important thing is to recognize that we have stuff, start dealing with it, but also recognize that when we fall down, we have to get up again. We can't just wallow around, oh, I'm so bad, because it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help the people we're supposed to be moving towards enlightenment to help. It doesn't help us to reinforce our negative patterns and negative self-image. We need to move on, So yes, I said it yesterday, but I'll say it again. If you have a chance, you should see, there's a singer called Kiala, and she did a song called This Is Me, and it was in a film called The Showman or something like that. And but you don't want to see on YouTube, you don't want to see the one where she's in the film, and you don't want to see the ones where she's on Graham Norton's show, although it's very good. What you want to see is when they are presenting to the movie executives that this is going to be the theme of the show, because she's a big girl, and clearly she's been got at every now and again for her size, but she So she starts off singing, and it's very unsure, it's very frail singing. And then she kind of gets into it suddenly, and this power comes, and you see it, and you see everybody around become empowered by it. And it's brilliant. It's a magnificent moment, and it has, for me, great lines like, I am brave, I am bruised, this is who I'm meant to be, this is me, you know? Great lines, I love them. So, but that's what we need, that honesty. We're trying to move somewhere. We're not perfect, we're not, you know, but also we are not slaughtering innocent people in the middle of the desert, you know what I mean? We're behaving in a reasonable way. We're not perfect, but we're behaving in a reasonable way. Okay, so that's confession. Having moved on, actually there's another thing that maybe is worth, for anyone who does torma offering, once in a while or whenever, there's a very nice tradition, which Dagyi Rinpoche again brought up in Bellingham. You know, torma is about you make a kind of ritual cake and you offer it to these protectors who again are not protecting you from outside, they're protecting you from your own nonsense. But what you do when you make the torma, you bless it, and there's all this ritual, and then, but also you think all my rubbish, all my nonsense goes into this cake, and then the fierce protector devours it, so you're free of it. That's very nice. I like that. Very nice. Okay, so chapter 3. So it begins with rejoicing. So maybe the first 4 verses, would someone like to read that out? Using the talking stick. So page 12, verse 1 to 4. Any offers? Thank you so much. Yes, it is on. You have to hold it quite close to the mouth.
Okay. So, yeah. With joy I rejoice in the virtue that relieves the suffering of unfortunate rebirths of all sentient beings, and in the abiding in happiness of those subject to suffering. I rejoice in that accumulation of virtue that is the cause for enlightenment. I rejoice in the definite liberation of embodied creatures from the suffering of cyclic existence. I rejoice in the enlightenment of the protectors, and also in the grounds of their children. With joy I rejoice. In the ocean of virtue of generating the mind of enlightenment that causes all sentient beings happiness, as well in the deeds that benefit sentient beings.
Thank you. I mean, there's not much to say. We don't do enough rejoicing, you know, we really don't. And particularly these things, the fact that, you know, we meet people who work for others. You know, we were talking about Venerable Charles and how a lot of people say, well, if there is a Bodhisattva, he's it. He's trying to do that, you know, that he spends time with really difficult people that most of us are trying to avoid. He will give them masses of time. You know, that's the story that Jimmy Neal related of when he joined the monastery and the monks are being settled in, and he joins, and every week there's a kind of allocation of tasks. And most people were kind of, you know, doing what we do, look at the floor and kind of, and he'd just go, I'll do that, I'll do that, I'll do that, I'll do that. And then after a while they kind of got shamed and they were going, okay, I'll do that. No, you don't have to do that one, I'll do that. And changed the energy around. It's very interesting. But we know people who do good deeds, and in little ways, and also in big ways. They don't get in the news, they don't get in the newspapers, because that's all about people who hurt each other, isn't it? You know, it's very rare to find just stories about people who are decent and honest and kind. But there are plenty of people who are like that, you know, and that's how we rejoice. That thing, isn't that beautiful? Isn't it beautiful that there are people who see reality as it is, without superstition, without hallucination, who see reality as it is? isn't it beautiful who there are people who are willing to put themselves out for others, you know? Even the most simple things, like somebody who will help somebody with their luggage in an airport or with their shopping. People do it in lots of different ways, you know. With my mum in her village, people will help. They'll come around, you know. There's no reason to. There's, you know, in terms of logic of finance, there's absolutely no point in, you know, spending your valuable time doing that for somebody who'll be dead within 4 or 5 years, you know, but they do it. They do it. There are people who look after people who are down on their luck, you know, people who become homeless. People help them. People feed them. People help others in all sorts of different ways. And all of that is something to really appreciate and enjoy and rejoice and offer up, you know. Just, it's extraordinary when you think there is an awful lot of good in the world, but you wouldn't know it from the headlines, you know. And even after a disaster, you know, after a disaster, who comes in and cleans up? Who helps the people? Who rebuilds the houses? Communities pull together, all of that. That never gets the mention, you know what I mean? But there is that extraordinary work together. Or in terrible situations of when someone's been hurt by somebody else and that thing of forgiveness. To forgive is extraordinary, isn't it? To, you know, great hurt. I read a thing recently that, you know, when Angela Merkel flung open the doors for the refugees from Syria, of course what happened was a number of ISIL people also got in as well, because the doors were open and they came through on false papers. What's happening now is that because they made a deliberate thing of bringing in the people from the, what's the group of people who live around Mount Sinjar, who follow the peacock deity, who were considered non-anything and therefore could be enslaved and turned into sex slaves. So a lot of their girls were brought to Germany as part of a rehabilitation process. And now what they're finding is that they're walking around in Munich or Berlin or somewhere like that, and then they see their captor. They see their captor, and you can imagine how that feels, you know? And the Germans are trying to work out how they, because they're now starting to have lists of these people, but of course there's no proof anywhere, and German courts obviously demand proof to boot someone out. But that's hard, you know. And then sometimes you meet people who have forgiven them for behaving so appallingly like that. That's incredible, actually. It's extraordinary. But there are so many things to rejoice in that we should spend lots of time doing that. You know, it's easy, it's cheap. There's lots to do, and it makes us better people, but it also makes our interactions with others better. You know what I mean? If we're looking for the positive in people and the positive in situations, it makes it easier. It makes it flow better when we're dealing with others. Okay, so would someone like to read verse 5, 6? And, yeah, 5 and 6. Thank you.
With folded hands, I beseech the Buddhas of all directions to shine the lamp of Dharma for all bewildered in the darkness of suffering. With folded hands, I beseech the victors who wish to enter nirvana, not to leave migrating beings in blindness, and to remain for countless eons.
Thank you. Thank you. So, these verses get changed according to more likely your lineage of your teachings, actually, to be honest. But the traditional thing is to please teach us, and then if you've hosted a visiting Lama, then you know only too well what happens. You have to kind of teaching day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, last teaching, pandemonium as they leave. Just like, whoa, hang on a minute. And you're going, please stay a while, because we can also learn from them being with us, just their presence being with us. You know, if you, I've not spent time with Lama Zopa Rinpoche in any meaningful sense, because I love him to bits, but I'm terrified of him at the same time. But people who have, just being with him, they learn so much. You know, a friend of mine, who some of you also know, Michelle, she stayed with them up in Dharamsala in McLeod Ganj, and her job seemed to be kind of putting water out for the monkeys and helping in that way. But just the way he interacts with people and beings is just, it's a real teaching in itself. You know, it's just extraordinary to watch the way he's, like His Holiness Dalai Lama, when he meets somebody, he's completely for them at that moment. He's completely there. He's not like drifting past. He's completely there for you. And I think that's probably why that's that charismatic element. You know, when the Dalai Lamas looked at you, or when Rinpoche's looked at you, you feel this huge connection that happens, because they do actually pay you full attention, which is so unusual in our society, isn't it? It's like, you know, hello, Mike. Yeah, hi. You know. I mean, but he just, for that moment, full attention. But that's the reason we ask them to stay. Also, because if they stay, then you can ask again to teach. You know, but it's phrased in this thing of, please don't go into parinirvana. Please don't leave us. And that's around this thing of the compassion of our teachers, the compassion of the Buddhas. Because we're quite slow learners, to put it mildly, aren't we? You know, the amount of times we've been told, you know, stop doing bad, practice only good, subdue your own mind. This is the teaching of the Buddha. And we mishear it. So we practice bad, don't do much good, let the mind go wild. But, and in all honesty, you know, they should get up and go and think, oh, for goodness sake, and move on, you know, but they don't. They hang around with us to keep on teaching the same message over and over again in different formats, but it comes down to the same thing. Be kind, stabilize yourself, you know, be wise, interact with beings in a generous, kind, open-hearted way. But it takes time for the message to sink in, doesn't it? But that's the thing. Requesting teachings is really important. You know, with any Lama, you have to write and request teachings. You know, when Geshe Tashi was here, you'd have to go and say, you know, please would you teach this? Various people would ask him to teach various things, and then he'd say, oh, these people have asked me to teach this, these people have asked me to teach that, and then you go, so which one will you do? And then there's that choice. But you don't just, it's not like in the Christian tradition, when you go out to Elephant and Castle and there's somebody standing there with a megaphone telling you about the Word of God, which I often wonder why they do that. It must be a good training in dealing with your ego. But in Buddhism, you don't teach unless you're asked to teach. That's just how it is, and not just once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. You know, when Khandrila came here, and it was all very quick and very sudden, and so we kind of got everybody down from the UK centre to, because we've been asking for a long time. So when we went in London, we said, you know, please come back, and then Leeds said, please come back, and then Land of Joy said, please come back, and Bath said, please come back, and FPMT UK as a group said, please come back. And then she just laughed, and she said, yes, you've been asking for about 5 or 7 years now, so yes, I'll come. So you have to keep at it. It's not that kind of, oh, I've got a notion, I'll invite so-and-so, and then you don't follow it up with anything, you know. So, and again, that asking is about opening, isn't it? You know, if you really, really want something, you'll go for it. You'll hunt it out. You know, if you just got this kind of notion, you know, oh, it'd be great to have like this really highest yoga tantra initiation, and then you kind of go, oh, you know, will you give me this to the High Lama? More likely than not, they'll just look at you and go, oh, I'll think about it. You know. But if you keep on going back, particularly if you ask for texts that you can actually work with, we can work with things that deal with our ignorance and stupidity and turn it into compassion and wisdom, then they will teach. And then out of that, your journey on the path becomes richer, doesn't it? When somebody teaches you something, and you move away from the sort of charismatic level of Buddhism, which is very important in Tibetan Buddhism, but it can be a bit kind of Hello magazine, and you know, when you get to a bit of depth, you suddenly realize this tradition is massive, you know. It's so rich and deep, and there's so many levels of metaphor and allusion, and it's extraordinary. It's a huge banquet, and you know we can. But you have to ask to start to feed on that and to work with these things. Okay, so then. Would somebody please read up from 3.7, so verse 7, right the way through to 17. Would somebody please do that? That's a long haul now. It's a long haul. Thank you. Do you need some water first? Do you want some water first? No? Hold it near your mouth, because it doesn't have much power, that thing.
Thus, by the virtue accumulated through all that I've done, may all the suffering of all sentient beings be dispelled. May I be the doctor and the medicine. May I be the nurse for all sick migrating beings in the world until their sicknesses are healed. May a rain of food and drink descend to clear away the suffering of thirst and hunger, and during the eon of famine, may I myself turn into food and drink. May I become an inexhaustible treasure for those who are poor and destitute. May I turn into various articles of all necessities and abide close before them. Without any sense of loss, I shall give my body and resources, as well as all my virtue of the 3 times, for the sake of accomplishing the welfare of all sentient beings. By giving all, I shall transcend sorrow, and my mind will accomplish nirvana. All will be given similarly. It is best that I give to all sentient beings. Having already given this body as what makes them happy, for the pleasure of all embodied beings, depending on what pleases them, constantly killing, abusing, or beating it. Although they may play with my body and make it a basis of jest and blame, because I have already given this body of mine to them, why do I act with concern? I shall make it do whatever action that will cause any harm. When anyone encounters me, may it never be meaningless for them. If in those who encounter me a faithful or an angry mind arises, may that eternally become the cause for fulfilling all their aims. May all who say bad things to me or cause me any other harm, and those who mock and insult me, have the fortune to become enlightened.
Thank you. What I wanted to show by that, and thank you for reciting it, is that it's not just verse 7 that is the dedication. It's continuing on, you know, where all virtue, may all suffering of sentient beings be dispelled, and then afterwards it's the kind of how, you know. It's the how will I do that? We'll look at that in more detail after the tea break. We'll do some meditation now, but of course, being totally chaotic, I've ended up not having any of the meditations for So we'll just see if there's some here. Good. No, it's okay. They're here. So the meditation is on rejoicing. So again, these words are a trigger. You don't have to follow them, but if they're useful, then do it. But it's that positive, upwelling mind that we're trying to make. So the verses are the first verse and the second verse. With joy I rejoice in the virtue that relieves the suffering of unfortunate rebirths of all sentient beings, and in the abiding in happiness of all those subject to suffering. I rejoice in that accumulation of virtue that is the cause for enlightenment. I rejoice in the definite liberation of embodied creatures from the suffering of psychic existence. So it's focused very much on bodhicitta. So at some stage in your meditation, please rejoice that bodhicitta exists as a mental state, exists as an attainable mental state, and that people who embody that are around us to inspire us. But also think of anything else that is positive and beautiful, particularly in your own life. Make it real, bring it into your own life. All the beautiful things to rejoice at, that you've heard of, seen, experienced, just to rejoice, to lift that whole mind and make it positive and bright. Yeah? Okay, so we'll just do that for a few minutes. Thank you. Okay, so tea break. And